from the mainstream media. So, well, I didn't see it on, any of the major networks, and even Fox didn't carry it. That doesn't work. Someone set off a weapon. It either had to be an intercept or an intentional above ground test. It had to be some form of maybe a signal being sent. And I'm just focusing on North Korea because, again, they're working overtime to build the delivery system. And they've also acquired the micro miniaturization of warheads. And in the open black market, it's kind of like the old song, you can get anything that you want at Alice's restaurant. And if you have the money, you can buy anything. And I'm sorry, but that's the way it goes. Anything. How you take delivery of it and where you take delivery of it, those are problems. And obviously, when you're dealing with clandestine nuclear weapons or fissile materials, or you're dealing with this group of terrorists versus that group of terrorists. One group of terrorists has part A, the other group of terrorists has part B, and the release of the different triggers and the different technology to detonate those, it's way beyond a dirty bomb. Yes, a dirty bomb just means a conventional explosive that has radioactive material that disseminates the radioactive material through a standard explosion. We're talking about total, real nuclear detonations. So what is fascinating to me is the fact that we're seeing this radiation. Now, we were gone for 3 days, and when we flew back, there was no change in the count. Radiation is measured in millisieverts, sievert millirems. Some people use the centigrade scale, and the knowledge of radiation is so primal now. It used to be a big deal. I can remember even the 1962, 64 time period when we were being taught about, obviously, the potential for nuclear war, of understanding what a REM was. REM. It's not a band, okay? It is a Roentgen equivalent man. In other words, how much nuclear radiation is a person exposed to per kilogram or per pound of their body weight. Lethal doses of radiation exposure have been rising dramatically, meaning that they're trying to raise the bar or limit on the true dangers of radiation. One of the things that people don't understand, and this is why radiologists and others who work around nuclear materials usually have a dosimeter. Some people pronounce it dose meter, which is basically a miniature recording Geiger counter with a scale that shows the maximum exposure you received in a day. They then download those into computers, and a chart is given, and there's a limit for those who work in the nuclear field that they can only have so much, even over the course of their career. So we're going to take a quick break here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Radiation dose units, it's interesting because there are three basic words that are used, and sometimes it's confusing, but for practical purposes, we're going to use just the three most prominent terms. Now, GY, the letter G as in Georgia, a Y as in yesterday, equals 100 rads. A milligray is 100 millirads. In other words, rads, sieverts, rem. It all means the same thing. And why that's important is people sometimes think that one doesn't translate into the other. But again, because of what we're talking about, there's no issue and we don't have to worry about that. Now, radiation, again, gamma radiation travels literally at the speed of light, 186,284 miles per hour. And to protect yourself from gamma radiation, which is the most deadly radiation, especially from a nuclear explosion, there are three things to remember. Time and distance. The further you are away from the detonation, the better. Shielding. That means that something has to be above you, on the sides of you, and beneath you to protect you from the cosmic ray penetration. It's the mass of the shielding material that does the blocking. The more shielding, the better. And usually they have a talk or a halving thickness. That's a term. Halving thickness simply means that the shielding is measured by a fraction of gamma rays that it blocks. If a certain thickness blocks half of the incoming radiation, then adding the same thickness again will block half of what's left. Radiation shielding materials are commonly categorized by their halving layer values. In other words, can they cut in half and half and half? So there's a wonderful little chart, and I'll give this kind of an example to you. For instance, in order to cut, and this is really important, to achieve a protection factor of 1,000, that simply means that you'll get 1,000 times less the radiation exposure, and that's just protection factor. You can call it a PF, protection factor 1,000. Material, for instance, lead. 4 inches of lead is equal to 10 inches of steel, which is equal to 24 inches of concrete. Packed dirt is 36 inches. Water is 72, and wood is 110. So basically, the idea is that the denser the material, the safer you are. There used to be a book put out by Gary North called Fighting Chance, and it was called 4 Feet to Survival. You can go on the internet and download for free Crescent Kearney, I believe it's Kerny, obviously Kearney's, apostrophe S, Nuclear War Survival Skills. It is free. Everything is a expedient fallout shelter. Everything tells you how to make an air pump. All this stuff is very, very inexpensive. And so I would encourage everybody to start thinking along this realm because things are escalating. Now, again, radiation is cumulative. I doubt anybody's going to carry this story. I've gotten emails from Norway. I've gotten emails from different parts of the United States. I've gotten emails from northern Canada. I've gotten emails from Azerbaijan, I think it is, or, a country over there. But everything that I get says this. We have our meters, and by the way, there are a lot of sharp people around the world. We have our meters set on a threshold, and we're watching a scaling going up. In other words, if the meter is usually reading like this for a baseline, a lot of them are saying they're starting to see this, kind of like a stair step up. The basis of that has to be ascertained. Now, we know that the Russians have a major presence, obviously, in the Arctic. And if you don't understand the Russian Arctic presence, I mean, my guess when it's quick and dirty is it's at least 1,000 to 10,000 times higher than the presence of the United States, just by men, materials, bases, the amount of nuclear submarines they have there, the amount of even landing places for their aircraft. And remember this, that the idea was, and there's actually an internet story, probably 4 years old, about using weather modification to change the temperature. I'm talking about electromagnetic warfare being used to melt the polar ice caps, plural. Right now they're focusing on the Arctic. By raising the temperature in the Arctic, in the North Pole area, it makes everything a whole lot easier, whether you're extracting minerals, natural gas, or oil. It's basically what we're watching now all over the world. There's a rush for resources. There's a rush for natural resources. So I want to get back to who are the 3 main possibilities, maybe 4, but the 3 most prominent nuclear powers in the world right now are the United States, Russia, and China, not in that order. Then followed by Pakistan. And believe it or not, Pakistan, India, North Korea, not in any specific order, but Pakistan, the black market for nuclear weapons, and when he was in the head of Pakistan's nuclear agency, Dr. Khan, Khan, that was in the days when, seriously, if you had the money, you could buy nuclear technology. If you had $1 million, you could buy nuclear technology. I actually talked to one of those guys, he's dead now, just to see what the going market was. So, that would have been 17 years ago. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the idea that we have had a major explosion, a nuclear explosion, with pretty much major indication by the count per minute of radioactive particles, it really behooves you to keep your eyes open. You can go and watch on the internet, the United States nuclear readings. You can go on different websites and, just type it in whatever search engine you're using. But I think with what we're seeing now and what's happening, as the tension increases, we're going to see more and more people starting to get the feeling, and it is a genuine feeling, that things are just getting more and more dangerous and more, not just explosive, sorry for the word, but more tenuous, more perilous. And it's kind of like you see 10 fingers on a cliff, and when one hand goes, the guy might swing in the direction of the hand that's dropped, like a mountain climber, okay? But you're watching finger by finger by finger by finger. I'm making sure I use the right order of these fingers, by the pinky there, here, and now we're holding on, let's say with our index finger of one of our arms. That's how perilous this is going to get. If you pay attention to the President Donald Trump, you're going to see that he says it's not going to be allowed to happen. With the amount of news stories being released on the worldwide press about North Korea and their amount of testing, at this point, I would say that it appears that even North Korea might have tested out a low-yield nuke in the upper atmosphere just to make sure everything was working. If that's the case, then things have gone into the needle is not only into the red, it's not only pegged at the red, the whole bloody face of the meter is red now. So, pay attention, get prepared. The first thing you need to do is to go on the internet, do a search for Nuclear War Survival Skills by Crescent Kearney. It is free. It is downloadable in a PDF, and I recommend you download it. Second thing you got to understand is food first. Third thing you've got to understand is that you've got to notice and identify the target areas, the main target areas that are closest to you, i.e. the obvious ones: power plants, nuclear reactors, military bases, scientific centers, areas where railroad centers, shipyards, naval shipyards, all those things. That's what the primary targets are going to be. If you remember, 2 weeks ago, one of the Russian ships, one of the spy ships, was seen off the East Coast. But what they didn't tell you is how many Chinese subs were off the West Coast. They didn't tell you what was in the Gulf of Mexico. And it only portends, or only telegraphs, that the time that we're dealing with right now becomes more and more perilous. Again, the next update, I hope to have a pretty interesting update on thermal vision, night vision, and I'll have a special guest on, and we're going to try and do a two-way on this between he and I, so you can see us both on the screen and stuff we hold up. It's not show and tell. But again, it doesn't do any good to think that, you even understand. Now, those of you in the military and veterans will. But if you do not understand the technological superiority of, even special operations, and know the bad guys buy all this stuff on the black market, you're going to find out probably that you may want to sell some of the safe queens. A safe queen is a firearm that will only be taken out, when you either got to use it or, it's going to be taken from you. But you can only shoot so many rifles. You can only shoot so many pistols. But if you can't see in the dark, you're toast. If you don't understand the tactics of what is going to be used against you in the dark, you're toast. Toast is a nice way of saying that your goose is not only cooked, but it's being served up on a silver platter. Unfortunately, they're, cooking the goose in your house, which is you, and using all your stuff to serve it up. Maybe even more prophetic than I think. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in today, and I'm going to encourage you all to pay very specific attention to the alerts I'm going to be posting on my website concerning the different radiation. Those of you in the United States or in Europe or in Asia that are monitoring radiation in your area, when you see a spike anomaly, please email me, steve777 at stevequayle.com. Good afternoon. God bless each and every one of you. And remember this, the ultimate survival item is your brain. The ultimate survival information is that which you know, appropriate, and practice. And then you want to be as far away from the event as you can. Now, here, let me make it one more time, even very simple. A lot of people have life insurance. They got every kind of insurance you can buy. You can buy health insurance, have to have it. You can buy house insurance. You can buy flood insurance. You can buy natural disaster insurance. You can buy business interruption insurance. You can buy life casualty. You can insure your artifacts or your strange things that are worth more money than you even probably know. But that's insurance. Something has to happen for you to collect on that policy. On the other hand, survival, and I think I defined this, 35 years ago, life assurance. It's your LAP. It's your life assurance policy. What's a water filter worth to someone that can't drink water because it's so polluted, but if you had a water filter, you could provide water? What's food worth? What's a can of tuna? What's a can of salmon pre-Fukushima? What is a 50-pound bag of rice? And so, ladies and gentlemen, again, prepare. I want to just go on record because I'm getting emails today, which is Saturday, the 25th of February. Do not buy silver or gold if you're buying under $1,000 worth, unless you're buying, over cumulative time you can afford it. You must acquire your food now. It isn't quantum physics or even advanced chemistry to let you know that things are happening that are going to affect the calorie count and the purity of the food that you're going to be able to even acquire if and when you can acquire it. No one would have thought Venezuela would be in the state it's in or in the condition it's in. No one ever thinks, most people don't think, actually I'd say the majority don't think, until it comes time to act. And when they have to, quote, act, they could have acted ahead of time, but then they can only react, and reacting to empty shells doesn't get you any place.
So, this catastrophe occurred back in 2011, and since then, hundreds of millions of tons of radioactive water has leaked into the Pacific. Just to give you an idea of how big the Pacific is, just Google Earth, the Pacific Ocean. It's pretty much half the planet. So, because it is about half the planet, we must consider that out of all the life on Earth, a great percentage of that life is in it. You see, plants and animals are not immune to radiation. They develop mutations and die off. So I can honestly not think of anything more haunting than the idea of a dead Pacific Ocean. But it's happening. There's no need to keep looking at some crazy map of the radiation plumes spreading across the Pacific. It's everywhere now. It's in our water, it's in our food, it is in our tissue, and it will definitely be in our children's tissue. I think most people have seen this map by now, which is not a map of Fukushima radiation, but a map showing oceanic wave heights. These maps are just models, simulations based on the collected data at that time. They do not know exactly how much radiation is spewing out of the reactors or where it is going. The heavier radioactive particles sink into the ocean as the lighter particles get into the atmosphere, and there is a cumulative effect. Aside from the air blowing around radioactive dust, the entire ecosystem of the ocean is contaminated, and anything coming out of that ocean onto someone's dinner plate will contaminate the person eating it. And it gets worse, folks. Much worse. You see, I don't think many people get what this means. Because of this radiation, everything will begin to literally fall apart. Understand that this radiation, affects everything that is a thing. Metal, rock, concrete, all that, yes. Because these radioactive particles knock holes in the atomic matrix of matter. So metal will weaken. It will affect electronic circuitry. They keep sending in these robots, and they can't even get a photo to see what's going on because the robots literally melt when they get too close. That's why more and more planes are going to start falling out of the sky, like they have been. You're going to have more train derailments. You're going to see large structures fail and collapse. Get this, amusement park rides are beginning to lose their structural integrity as well. Now this is known as the Wigner effect, and it is very real. This is when neutron radiation causes the displacement of atoms within an object or matter. It, in fact, changes the object. There is no element on this planet that can contain this nuclear material. Even the power plants that are currently active leak radiation. Lead doesn't stop it, it only slows it down. This is why you need so many layers of it for it to be effective. Over time, this stuff will decay anything. They have to keep replacing the sarcophagus in Chernobyl because the radiation just keeps eating through whatever they bury it in. And this nuclear material over at Fukushima is just burning through the floor into the ground. All they can do is just keep flooding it with water that they have to then store in large containers that are not welded but bolted together. These things are leaking radioactive water like crazy, and the amount of radiation coming out of these reactors is increasing. It is a true horror show, ladies and gentlemen. And now the evacuated areas have been taken over by wild radioactive borers. And they are attempting to move people back in. I can't make this stuff up. I can't. And it really brings me to tears knowing that the people of Japan are not going to be well off as a result of this. And we may be witnessing what will be the complete death of this country and its people. But it's not just Fukushima, folks. The Halden nuclear reactor in Norway is raising concerns because it is failing and they are releasing radioactive particles into the air through ventilation to keep the reactor from melting down. If you live on the east coast of the US, well, the Indian Point nuclear reactor has been leaking tritium into the water and God knows what else. And to top it off, they built this thing on a fault line. You see, folks, construction for many of these nuclear plants begin in the 50s, and these facilities only have a lifespan of about 40 years. It is now 2017. You do the math. These reactors are due to fall apart, and some of these madmen don't care. And just to show you how sick these madmen are, I want you all to go take a look at the time-lapse map of every nuclear explosion from 1945 to 1998. Now this map is obviously not current, but the radiation given off by these bombs still is. And guess who's responsible for detonating the most nukes? I'm telling you, you may get freaked out by watching explosion after explosion on this time lapse. I'm talking about more than a couple thousand detonations worldwide. And we act like this is normal. This doesn't look good. It really doesn't. Radioactive elements mimic nutrients such as calcium and potassium in the body. And this radiation, these macronutrients, are readily absorbed by the body, especially if you are mineral deficient. This is why I stress cleansing and trace mineral supplementation, as well as investing in a Geiger counter to test your food. This may not be the end of mankind and everything else, but we are definitely on the road to total destruction. If we don't make some moves to use methods of creating energy that won't kill us all, there are going to be some changes occurring around the world. and we may have to take some steps backward before we can fix this. If we can fix this at all. But I believe not all will be lost, and we will get through this in the end, knowing that we have finally been released.
You a bounty hunter?
Man's got to do something for a living these days.
Dying ain't much of a living, boy.